Mummy stories are a way to conceal the true purpose of an industrial facility. Throughout the history of their study, not a single mummy, sarcophagus, or funerary item has been discovered inside the Great Pyramids. The chambers are completely devoid of torch soot, which would be inevitable during lengthy rituals or burial processes. The walls of the internal rooms lack the paintings and texts characteristic of Egyptian tombs from other periods. The technical cleanliness of the sites suggests their operation as sterile zones for working with liquids or gases under pressure. The architecture of the internal shafts, with cross-sections of only a few dozen centimeters, precludes their use by humans, but is perfectly suited for transporting fluids or equalizing pressure. Calling a pyramid a tomb is like calling a modern hydroelectric power station an elite crypt, just because its purpose is misunderstood by future archaeologists. The construction site was chosen not by a priest, but by a chief irrigation engineer. The Giza Plateau is the ideal foundation for a heavy industrial hub. The facility is located on a limestone plateau at a strategic point where the Nile's course in antiquity ran close to the highland. The choice of location was driven by the need to create hydraulic head. The height difference between the river and the internal chambers allowed gravity to be used to trigger the system. The pyramids were placed over a network of natural underground aquifers that filled under immense pressure during floods. The geological stability of the plateau ensured the preservation of the channel's geometry under the colossal loads generated by the movement of hundreds of thousands of tons of water inside the structure. The placement of the pyramids was dictated by groundwater maps and seasonal flooding schedules, not by the position of stars in the sky. The triangular profile is not a symbol of power, but an engineering calculation of the resistance of materials and water. The four-sided pyramidal shape is the optimal solution for dampening the energy of a water hammer. During the seasonal floods of the Nile, when water rose to the base of the plateau, the construction functioned as a massive breakwater. The sloped faces redirected the kinetic energy of the flow, preventing structural collapse and minimizing foundation erosion. Unlike vertical walls, which take the full force of a frontal impact, the pyramid cleaves the flow, forcing the water to bypass the object with minimal resistance. This ensured the stability of the hydraulic hub for millennia. Despite colossal annual loads, the angles of the pyramid slopes were dictated by the laws of hydraulics, turning a wonder of the world into a giant stationary turbine for taming the river. The system functioned without external power sources, using gravity as a free engine. Due to the specific internal geometry of the channels, the pyramid operated on the principle of communicating vessels and a hydraulic seal. The difference in water levels between the river and the interior of the facility created a low-pressure zone in the central chambers. This allowed for the passive suction of water from underground horizons and its elevation through inclined shafts to heights unreachable during a normal flood. The design utilized the physical law of density and pressure differentials. As the lower reservoirs filled, the displaced air created a draft that activated the lift of the next portion of liquid. The system converted the potential energy of the flood into the kinetic energy of a directed flow. The physics of atmospheric pressure and gravity replaced modern electric pumps for ancient engineers, making the water supply completely autonomous. Gods were invented so that workers wouldn't demand market-rate payments for cleaning sludge filters. The uninterrupted operation of the hydraulic hub required the constant presence of a massive maintenance staff, from gate technicians to silted channel cleaners. To eliminate financial risks and union demands, the corporation introduced the concept of divine duty. The labor of maintaining the pumping stations was declared a sacred service that ensured world order and life after death. The religious cult acted as an effective HR tool, turning hired workers into fanatical volunteers, ready to work for a minimum ration for the sake of mythical bonuses in an afterlife office. It is easier and cheaper to make staff believe in Ra than to pay a competitive salary for hard physical labor in high humidity conditions. The pyramids saved the corporate budget by turning a destructive flood into a controlled influx of capital. Without external management, the Nile floods were chaotic. They either washed away the fertile layer or failed to reach remote areas. The pyramid functioned as the main pressure regulator in the irrigation network. Water raised by the pump was distributed through a system of locks and artificial channels into arid zones, increasing cultivated areas several times over. This allowed the corporation to gather a predictable harvest and avoid food crises. The facility effectively dictated the agricultural schedule for the entire region, turning a natural disaster into a technological process with predefined output parameters. Egypt's greatness rested not on the prayers of priests, but on the stable pressure in the water supply system provided by this stone processor. The so-called King's Chamber is not a bedroom for the dead, but expansion tanks and receivers for pressure relief. The internal voids of the pyramid are designed as complex hydraulic cavities. The granite blocks in the King's Chamber are fitted with precision accuracy to withstand colossal water and air pressure without failure. Located above the chamber are 5 relieving spaces, often mistaken for architectural excess. In reality, these are dampers that mitigate water hammers during sharp fluctuations in the system's water level. The chambers functioned as resonators, stabilizing the flow and preventing cavitation, which could have turned the masonry into dust within a few pumping cycles. What archaeologists call ritual halls would be listed in engineering documentation as pressurized receivers for balancing operational loads. The entire body of the pyramid is not just a mountain of stone, but a single giant filtration element and a passive moisture conductor. To operate the hydraulic hub, the specific properties of the limestone used for the bulk of the object were exploited. The porous structure of this stone, combined with the tight fitting of the blocks, created a capillary lift effect. This allowed moisture to be held within the structure and drawn up to the upper levels, creating the necessary temperature gradient. The outer casing of dense white limestone served as a hermetic skin, preventing uncontrolled evaporation and maintaining stable internal pressure. The temperature difference between the scorching surface and the moist inner core activated the movement of air masses required for the operation of the passive vacuum pump. Materials were selected based on their water absorption and thermal conductivity coefficients, turning the pyramid into a high-tech membrane filter. Geology does not lie. The stones of the pyramids bear the characteristic marks of years of operation under the load of water masses. A detailed technical audit of the lower tiers and internal shafts reveals signs of specific wear that cannot be attributed to wind or sand. Erosion identical to that observed in modern hydraulic structures has been recorded on the casing blocks and at the channel junctions. Characteristic scouring of the rock and lime deposits indicate prolonged contact with powerful water flows circulating under pressure. Furthermore, traces of sedimentary deposits typical of Nile silt have been found in the horizontal corridors and underground chambers, confirming their direct inclusion in the irrigation circuit. Nature has left clear receipts for resource consumption on the site, which historians persistently try to pass off as defects from the aging of the stone. The priest caste were not mystics, but certified operations engineers with highly restricted access to technical documentation. The so-called sacred rituals were strictly regulated maintenance works for the hydraulic hub. Fumigating the chambers with incense served to check for airtightness and detect air leaks by following the direction of the smoke, while ritual chanting inside the resonating halls was a method of acoustic monitoring for structural integrity. Knowledge of the passive pump's principles was intentionally sacralized and hidden behind a complex mythology. This allowed the corporation to protect its technological patents and ensured that no outsiders who had not undergone years of initiation, specialized training, would be allowed to manage the critical infrastructure. The temple was a control room, and the recitation of prayers was the reading of safety checklists before system startup during a flood. The pyramid ceased to be a wonder of the world and became a pile of stone exactly at the moment when their repair stopped paying off. Any hydraulic system has a limited lifespan, and the Giza pyramids were no exception. The main technical problem was the gradual shifting of the Nile's course and the accumulation of a multi-meter layer of silt in the underground supply channels. The silting of critical nodes led to a drop in pressure within the passive pump and a loss of efficiency. Additionally, centuries of vibration from water hammers caused micro-cracks in the granite receivers, compromising the system's airtightness. When the costs of cleaning deep shafts and restoring the vacuum circuit exceeded the profits from the additional harvest, the corporation decided to decommission the site. What we consider a mystery of eternity today is simply the abandoned workshop of an obsolete plant that became too expensive to maintain.